Hello, welcome to a quick recap of how foreign exchange markets work. Fairly common kind of free response question you would see on the AP exam. Could be in combination with a policy question as well, because policies, domestic policies as far as monetary or fiscal, definitely influence the international value of a dollar. Okay, so just a reminder, the foreign exchange rate is always given in terms of another currency. So appreciation or depreciation of the dollar means if the dollar is appreciating, the dollar can buy more yen. If the dollar is depreciating, it can buy less yen. That is different from the domestic value of a dollar. We could have inflation, which means the purchasing power of the dollar in the United States goes down, but that does not mean that we're always going to have a weaker dollar as a result. There are other forces at play there. Maybe interest rate changes have a stronger effect than an inflation rate change. So in order to understand these questions, if you're asked anything like this on a free response, they're going to ask you about one particular factor that could affect exchange rates in isolation, right? They're going to isolate just the effect of interest rates, just the effect of inflation, just the effect of maybe a change in taste for a particular country's products. Those can definitely change the value of a currency. So just keep that in mind, that the domestic change in the value of the dollar because of inflation may or may not be related to the international value of the dollar. All right. The value of a currency depends on who's buying and who's selling and how much they're going to buy and sell. The main, as I mentioned, the main factors are policy related. So relative interest rates and interest rate changes often come about because of policy changes, although expectations about the business cycle definitely play a role. As far as drawing the graphs, in order to show your understanding of this, always use two graphs. The quantity changes are going to be in the same, will be the same, so they both are going to increase. Although in one graph you'll see an increase in demand, and in another graph you'll see an increase in supply. And I'll show an example of that in just a second. This one right here, the prices, you'll notice there's a yen per dollar and a dollar per yen. So you have to think about it, if you want to think about it in terms of numbers, it might be 100 yen per $1, and that would be 0.01 per 1 yen. So when you think about the denominator is always going to be 1. Other things to point out here, the quantity is always the same as the title, which is always the same as the thing in the denominator. So just be aware of that. Let me erase this. All right. Now, an analogy here, again, to remind you that this is not a domestic issue. So imagine you've got a boat leaving Japan and a boat leaving the U.S., and they have a bunch of their currencies, their respective currencies on them. And in the middle, they're going to meet and make some sort of exchange. So if we're buying things from Japan, then in this case, here's the demand curve. The demand would go up for yen, okay, because we want yen, which would mean that the supply of dollars in the yen market would go up, which would mean that the dollar market would go up, which would mean that the value of a dollar drops. So the currency is going to go up for one country, down for one country, and the way that happens is a supply shift for one and a demand shift for the other. So here's a sample problem, multiple choice problem. Which of the following events could have caused that and why? So the dollar depreciates. What could have caused that and why? Take a minute, look at all these. We maybe want to pause it and look at it for a second before we go through this. So if you're going to hit the pause button, do so now. All right, the Fed intervened in the foreign exchange market and sold dollars. Would that cause the dollar to depreciate? I'm going to go back to this one. So if the Fed sells more dollars, well, that's an increase in supply. So yeah, the price of a dollar then would drop. B, the Fed intervened in the market, foreign exchange market, and bought dollars. But not the case here because, get that out of there, the dollar increases in value if the Fed buys more. Price one, price two. So B would not be a reason why the dollar depreciated. People begin to expect the dollar to depreciate. That's C. Okay, if people expect the dollar to depreciate, that means internationally, not just the United States, what are people going to do? Well, they're going to want to get rid of their dollars, so they're going to sell them. So supply of dollars goes up, and the price of dollars drops. C is also a reason why the dollar would depreciate. D, the U.S. interest rate decreased relative to foreign interest rates. Same thing. If this here, whoa, hi, hello. So if the yen is going up in value, sorry, the Japanese central bank raises interest rates relative to ours. Well, then people in the United States even are going to demand more yen. So the demand for yen would go up. It would be facilitated. Oh, why does that keep moving? There we go. It will be facilitated by an increase in the supply of the dollar. Okay, so if we want to put our money in Japanese banks, we take dollars out of ours, go buy yen, and what happens? The dollar depreciates and the yen appreciates. And you notice I've been kind of lazy here. I haven't been including my quantities every time. Please do not forget that. And notice that the quantities go in the same direction. So D would also be a reason. And then E, foreign investment in the U.S. increases. Well, if foreigners want to put their money into our businesses, or they want to perhaps buy our real assets, then actually that would drive up the value of the dollar. Dollar demand would increase. All right. Sample problem. Let's put one of these together here. Sample problem: if Japan has a lower inflation rate than the U.S. and it persists for several years, what will happen to the relative value of the dollar? So go ahead and pause it, and we'll come back to this. And when I say come back to it, after you've drawn the graph, so take a few minutes and do that. So you've got a dollar market and a yen market, and consider the effect of a lower inflation rate in Japan than in the U.S., and it's very persistent. Okay, so this is what I was talking about before. The inflation rate definitely can affect the international value of a dollar, but when you get a question asked about it, it's going to be in isolation. So if you see a question that's focusing on interest rates, don't worry about the effect of inflation. Just worry about the effect of interest rates. This one is about interest rates. So here's our two markets. If prices in Japan are not going up as quickly or not going up much at all relative to American products, well, what does that mean? That means Americans are going to want to buy more Japanese products. So we would have to increase our demand for yen in order to buy more Japanese products. A purchase of yen is facilitated through an increase in the supply, of dollars to the international currency market. So the result would be an increase in the value of a yen and a depreciation of the dollar. All right, this was an old bell work. We'll just use this as a practice problem. Get this up here. So it says suppose the euro keeps rising and hits $2. So in other words, it costs $2 for 1 euro. All right. Now, at this point, the Fed decides to stop the euro from rising and conversely stop the dollar from falling in value by intervening in the foreign exchange markets. What actions might the Fed take to market? What would the result of that action look like in the foreign exchange markets towards a draw? So again, go ahead and hit your pause button, take a minute, and try out this problem. Okay, so we're trying to figure out how the Fed can stop the value of the dollar from continuing to plummet. I'm not sure why they would do this. I'm sure they have good reasons, but let's not worry about that. So how would they do this? If we look at a euro dollar market set up like this. Um, and I used the numbers that they gave. I'm not asking or expecting you to do that. P1, for these right here, P1 for both of them will be fine. So part of that balance of payments study, the official settlements account, give you a clue that the Fed and the Treasury hold a lot of foreign currency because foreigners do buy a lot of things from us. And what do they do with that money? Well, they use it to potentially prop up the value of the dollar in the currency market like this problem is suggesting. So what they would do is they would basically increase the supply of euros in the euro market by releasing a bunch of euros. So that would lower this to maybe, I don't know, say $1.50 for 1 euro. And then that would facilitate the purchase of more dollars, which would bring up the value of the dollar to 7 cents per dollar. Check my math on that. I'm sure if Brendan Dunnigan's watching this, he'll correct me. But yeah, that's basically the idea. So this is how this happens, and this is how exchange market works. Pretty straightforward stuff. After you're done reading 857 to 870, you ought to have a really good understanding of what affects the value of a dollar. And like I said, I'm going to give you a summary sheet on Monday. Anyway, enjoy. Thanks a lot.